Hey dudes and chicks and neither of those rules don't apply to you. Welcome back for last time. My name is Katie. Today, I am going to be duping the vibe of the new ColourPop Twilight collab palette. So if you guys are interested in seeing how I duped the palette, I didn't actually exactly dupe the palette because I actually didn't like it as much as I wanted to. So if you guys are interested in seeing my version of what was inspired by the ColourPop palette, was inspired by Amanda from Hayden Haunts and Unearthly Cosmetics and Ellie Starr, they did a collaboration where they created a build your own palette using all unearthly shadows, which I love that. I was totally into it. I was going to create the exact same palette and then give you guys the looks from it, except I didn't have all the shadows. And so then it was like, at that mixed with the fact that I wasn't 1000% in love with the Twilight color story, even though I was really in love with where they were going with it, but I wasn't gonna buy it. So if you love the idea, if you loved the kind of the color direction that they were going in, but you weren't like 1000% in love with the palette, or you were 1000% in love with the palette and you just couldn't get it, I think this video is going to be for you. So if you guys are interested in seeing how I got this look, or interested in seeing the palette that I created, or if you just like so much, then hang out. So I took my sweater off so that I could give you guys some swatches. So right up here in the upper corner is Crisp from the Fall Magic palette by Unearthly. It's like a white with a greeny shift and actually can go a little lavender as well. This color is Cretation from the Whale Song palette by Menagerie. That doesn't swatch very well, does it? But we all know it performs well. I was excited to have this color. This color right here is Seafoam from the Don't Be Jelly Revised by Unearthly. This is Storm Fairy by Ensley Rain, and you have to just be so careful with this one, for fuck's sake. And this is like a black base silver with a purple shift underlying. This is Gloom in the dark palette, I think, by Unearthly, which I had obviously the bigger pan version. I didn't even know there was a smaller pan version, so I guess I'm just out of the loop. But this has just a hint of like a lavender undertone in it, but you can't see it up next to that lavender-ish thing. That was one of the things, was that I felt like this palette really lacked lavender. This is Engulf. It's in the Dreamer palette, in the Unearthly Dreamer palette. I love this fucking color. This is one of the colors that Amanda and Ellie Starr had in their palette, and it was the only one that matched, what was it? It was that blue down in the bottom of the Unearthly shadows. It was the only one of the Unearthly shadows that kind of matched that color. What was that color? Let's just Google it. Or let's just... Sorry, I just got a funny text. Alex. I have several pictures. It's Irrevocably. It was the only Unearthly shadow that matched the color Irrevocably. And okay, so this is Whale Song in obviously the Whale Song palette by Menagerie. And this, I think, was my match for the Collins, but it actually has a subtle seafoam shift, which is fucking outstanding. And then this is Splash from the Whale Song palette. And this has, what does it have? It has a subtle shift. It has a subtle, I swear to God, it has a subtle tealy blue green shift and a subtle gold shift. This is Kerosene, as you guys have recently seen me swatch this. God, this palette is so good. I'm actually really excited about this color story that I created. Maybe I'm better at picking color stories than I think. This is Wolf Moon. Sorry, this is the Melt. This is Wolf Moon in the Ensley Rain palette. And this, I think, was my match for prom night. And it is like a very bright silver. I think it has a subtle lilac-y shift underneath, but it's very subtle. This is Earthy in the Fall Magic palette, and this was actually the most true to forest green that I just love it, that it's very green and not like a murky grayish. I felt like it was very green. This is Night Vision in the Nocturnal palette, and I'm actually having a hard time swatching these because they're on a magnetic. And this has a red, this is green, it's bright green, but it has like a red brown shift undertone, and it's almost a taupery shade. I actually had another Unearthly shadow in here that was one of the ones that Amanda and Ellie Star picked that was also taupery, but I had to pick the next shadow because it just, I felt like a blue-based white was necessary, and so it kind of had to replace that. So this is Boom Sour by Davina, and this is the white with the blue shift. And this has the blue undertone, which I have one with a green undertone. This is Fair Dinkum. I almost didn't pick this color just because I didn't want to say that word. I almost used God, that swatches terribly. I almost used a Liesel Cosmetics shadow, but I just remember I didn't love the swatches. I don't love that swatch. I don't love the name. And then this is Cosmos, and this is in the Astro Pink palette, which I uncluttered. It was just too cool. I couldn't get rid of it. And this is a black with a black sparkle, or like a silver sparkle. So this is my color story to dupe Only Make It Better, the ColourPop Twilight collab palette. Let's get into the look. Okay, my eyes are already primed in my P. Louise primer in Rumoro 2. I'm just gonna go into, I don't know what I'm actually gonna go into. I literally love every color in here, and I kind of just quickly, once I put this whole thing together, like just threw a bunch of shadows on and everything works. So it doesn't really matter what I do right now. I could do anything. So I'm gonna start with Earthy from the Fall Magic palette, just because, I don't know. So here's the deal. I actually just watched, this is my Voldemorphe JH40. Yesterday I watched the original Twilight. So basically, it was funny because I noticed that the cinematography was like when it was, and it was the original, the first Twilight, not the original, but the first Twilight. I feel like the picture that ColourPop used was from the first Twilight, and also, I feel like the mood was just a little bit different in that the first one. And so I noticed that actually when they would switch back and forth between Bella and Edward, when they would shine toward Edward, it was actually almost as if the coloring, like they had a color editing, like they edited the color, and it was almost like Edward, when they would flash to Edward, the lighting was green, and when they would flash to Bella, it was blue. And so it actually made it look like Bella was a little more blue and Edward was a little more green. And I'm not sure if that was like a tactic that they used, but because like we don't realize how much those color tricks affect our psyche when we're watching video, but because I was like thinking about the color of the palette, I was really noticing the color of the cinematography. And so it was just something that I noticed, that Edward was a little more green and Bella was always a little more blue. And it was almost as if they had edited that in. As I'm going through this, I don't think I'm going to put it in the beginning, but I do want to say that I feel like nobody really has mentioned the fact that, I don't even know if anybody's noticed, but I literally feel like no one even mentioned or noticed that there was actually 7 whites and silvers in this palette. In the ColourPop version of this palette. Now, I actually, like, when I saw that they were doing this, I obviously, just like the rest of the world, followed every single tease. I followed every single Instagram post of people doing the highlighters, then doing the lip products, then doing the whatever was the other thing that they had. And it was like, I followed it with bated breath, waiting for the palette reveal. Now, when they opened it, okay, I'm not gonna lie, I love the direction that they went. I love that they imitated that photo. I love how different of a vampire. I love how much that blue and green, like, actually really, it felt really inspired by the Twilight movie. However, I feel like they could have done a lot better with it, and I feel like the fact that there was 7 whites and silvers, no one's even mentioned the fact that there was literally 7 of the colors were like different versions of white and silver. And then 2 of the colors were brown. So do I feel like they could have they absolutely had to have a brown in that palette. They would have been missing the boat entirely to not have a brown in that palette. However, for me, I wasn't going to use a brown, so I didn't need to put a brown in my palette. But I do believe that they needed to put that brown in the palette because there's so much brown in the movie. And the mood is supposed to be like murky, rainy, foresty. They had to have a brown in the palette. I totally agree with them putting in a brown. But did I need to put a brown in my Build Your Own palette? Fuck no, I didn't. So I didn't do it. And that gave me 2 extra spaces. However, I just feel like no one even mentions the fact that there's, did I say 7? Yeah, there's 7 whites and silvers in the palette. I'm sure they're all nuanced and everything, but like nobody asked for 7 whites and silvers. Nobody's even mentioned it. I'm sure they're all different textures and like maybe have some different shifts and whatnot. Like I would love to see that play out like in real life. But like when I was making a Build Your Own palette and I saw all those whites and silvers, I'm like, does nobody even notice that there's whites and silvers? Now that kind of brings me to my next. You want to come say hi?
Oh, are you like live?
No, but I'm just filming. Oh, cutie. Okay, now I'm gonna go into kerosene. I don't necessarily agree with the name, but what do I know? It said that it was like based on poisons, but kerosene isn't a poison unless like people have actually used it. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about, unless, I mean, maybe has there been like a famous murderer who used kerosene to actually poison a victim? Like maybe a Munchausen syndrome mom giving their kid kerosene to keep them sick or some such shit. I mean, not that I could even imagine that. God, that really rolled off the tongue like I'm a natural, like I'm definitely a fucking Munchausen mom. Okay, so now let's get into the next topic about the availability of this ColourPop palette. Now, I saw that there was so many people who literally thought, okay, if you're one of these people, please don't be offended, just like hear me out. Okay, so when people think that like some shady shit's going on, I am usually kind of baffled by that because I rarely think shady shit is going on. I just fucking I think most people are doing their best. Like I just really believe that most people are doing their best. It always really surprises me when somebody ends up that it's actually like they actually did something scandalous, which is why I think like I hold such a grudge because like why I'm such a grudge holder with like say Morphe, because it really shocked me when I found out they were actually like really fucking people over. Like actually fucking people over. Like I was completely astonished by it. Okay, so everybody's on the ColourPop posts and they're like, could you please put a limit on how many of these people can buy because you guys sold out in like 5 minutes and basically people are pissed because they think that the reason why ColourPop sold out this launch in like 5 minutes was because they didn't put a limit on how many people can buy, and there's already Twilight palettes available on Mercari for like $200 or $400. Now, they thought that the reason why they sold out so quickly was because of scalpers. I think that, okay, so ColourPop has 10 million followers on Instagram. And Twilight Saga has 2.4 million subscribers or followers on Instagram. Doesn't anybody consider the fact that like there's no way that it's even remotely possible that of the 10 million people that are following ColourPop, who obviously are interested in what they got, or the 2.4 million people that follow the Twilight Saga, That's 12.4 million people that saw all those posts, not including all the people that don't follow ColourPop. Like, I just recently started following ColourPop because I'd really like to be able to... What the fuck? No. How did I get fallout from that? For the love. 12.4 million people are following, and that's not even including how many people just got the notifications in the algorithm, or from like things like Makeup Radar Release or Makeup on Your Radar or whatever. Is it possible, I'm just saying, like, is it possible that I'm gonna use my Jessup 227 and I'm gonna go into, God, I swear to God, anything could be so good. I'm gonna go into this color that's from the Don't Be Jelly 2 palette by Unearthly, and I'm just gonna... That, like, of all those people, there's no possible way that many people that ColourPop just accidentally sold out because that many people saw that ColourPop was having a Twilight release and fucking wanted it so bad. Like, I get it, like, people obviously did buy extras, but if they're already scalped on Mercari, isn't it like they didn't even have them shipped out yet? I ordered a ColourPop order like 3 days before the palette was even revealed, and it just got shipped out today. So I know for a fact that anybody who actually ordered the palette hasn't gotten it yet. They were obviously an influencer who got it given to them in PR and didn't film it or something. So it's like, I mean, am I in the dark? Is there, like, am I stupid? Is there, like, am I obviously missing the boat on this? Because I literally don't understand why everybody's, like, so mad that they sold out just because they wanted it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I obviously, like, I didn't even want it. That's the other thing about it is like, I didn't even want it. When I saw it, it just looked like a couple browns and a bunch of whites to me. But I did give the thought to like do it like a dupe, because I just had somebody tell me in my comments on one of my last videos, because they were like mad that like a lot of the brands that I feature, they weren't mad at me, but they were like, you know, they were talking about how they really like it when people dupe the vibe of a palette because they can't get a lot of the palettes that I use on my channel where they are without like paying an arm and a leg. And so what I was thinking when I saw it was that it would be really cool to dupe the vibe, because I really liked their idea. I really liked ColourPop's idea with the blues and the greens. However, I feel like, for one, the color that the picture that they used on the like inspo pic that was on the inside of the cover, it's in a field of purple flowers, and so I feel like that was really an opportunity missed for them to like put all those whites and silvers in there and not put any purples in there. So I already kind of had thought of the idea of maybe like duping the vibe, but I told you guys I could go any direction with this palette. I'm so happy with this build your own palette that I created. It's really good. I was already kind of considering duping the vibe of the palette because I really liked the idea, but I just didn't really like the palette. I was actually pretty disappointed with it. I had high hopes for it, but did I? Because it's ColourPop. I never have high hopes for ColourPop. It looked pretty watered down and washed out to me, and so I never have high hopes for ColourPop. Their palettes almost always suck. The only palette I think is an exception, well, not the only palette. One palette that I do think is an exception to the rule is that Aurora Mega palette, they call them, but they're not inexpensive. They're $35, so why would I buy ColourPop quality for like regular shadow price? So anyways, then when I saw Ellie Star, I saw Ellie Star's dupe, Unearthly dupe on Instagram, and I fucking fell in love with it immediately. I fell in love with it. So then I actually have it in my phone, the chronology of me photographing all the palettes that it showed that she was using by Unearthly, so that I could like make a list and then start like duping it and giving her credit and everything. Well, then like probably an hour later, I saw Amanda's video, or Hayden Haunt's video, from showing us the process of how her and Ellie Star duped out the ColourPop palette with all Unearthly shadows. So I was just gonna dupe out the palette with all Unearthly shadows and just copy their idea and totally give them credit, and then give you guys a few looks using their dupe. But then when I went to go do it, I don't have all the palettes that they used. I don't have well, for one, my In the Night was the bigger version, so the things didn't fit all nice together like how it did in hers. So I had to use one of these bigger ones. And then my Not Normal palette, my version of the Not Normal palette, which I don't know if the colors are the same because I didn't realize that I had a different version, but my Not Normal palette isn't the kind that comes out. It's not magnetic. It's the old school one, I guess. I didn't even know there was a revised version, but... there was like a critical color, taupe, I think was what it was. There was like a critical color that I couldn't get. And then I think there was 2 colors from the Not Normal palette that I couldn't get. And then there was 2 or 3 colors from the Heather Austin palette that I couldn't get. And I felt like they were critical as well. And so then I started looking at what I had and it wasn't adequate. And so I just decided to do my old build your own palette based on inspiration from one of my subscribers like recently, based on the fact that I didn't really love the ColourPop palette when I saw it get opened. I didn't really love it, so I didn't want to dupe it exactly anyway. And I didn't have all the things that I needed to create the same palette that Ellie Starr and Hayden Haunts created. So I just decided fuck it and created my own. Now, it took me hours to fucking put this together, and then it took me hours of going back in the next day and like revamping it and recreating it because I don't have the same, I don't have any, they're all different. And so the palette that I created at first, the color story was really good, but it was so chaotic that I didn't think you guys were going to be able to see a cohesive color story. So I just had to like really work on it and like get colors that actually fit a little better together and keep rearranging the ones that I had to leave in there because the color story, the way the shadows were like not fitting in there were looked like such a mess that I didn't think you guys were going to be able to like the color story because it was so messy. So then I watched the movie and came back and and made adjustments as I thought were appropriate in line with basically the color editing of the movie. I'm going back into that kerosene and I'm just going to, needless to say, I was thinking the other day about my Menagerie Whale Song palette sitting in my declutter box in my storage, and I decided I was going to undeclutter it a few days ago anyway, and then I thought, oh my god, that'd be so perfect for this. There's like some really perfect colors. So there was like actually 3 colors that were perfect. And quite frankly, I considered using some ColourPop colors, except ColourPop colors are not that good. So I just said fuck it, and I used all different. I even went out of my way to like switch out ColourPop colors that I had in there because ColourPop shadows aren't that good. The bottom line is, the brass tacks of this is that you have way better quality shadows that can dupe out the vibe, I'm sure of it. Damn, look at how nice that looks. I'm gonna go, and now I'm going into the Unearthly, and I'm just gonna blend that out. Pretty. Now I do feel like I could use a little more of a green, like a forest green. I feel like I maybe went a little too murky with the color story because I was really going for that gray, rainy, foresty vibe, both, right? Damn, that just blended out like so nice. And you know, I've been thinking about a lot of things. Like as I built this palette, this was like a huge like learning curve for me because I was just saying I don't like to mix mattes because I'm scared that the magic will go away, but that just blended like a fucking dream. So I'm wrong. I'm gonna go into that color earthy or whatever it was, the forest green, and I'm gonna really go like this because I feel like I have no real green going on right here. And I'm just gonna deepen up that outer V. So everybody's mad because they think that the reason why the palette sold out was because of scalpers. I think the reason why the palette sold out is because everyone wanted it. Everyone. I didn't even like it and I kind of wanted it. So like, of course, everyone wanted it. Why wouldn't they? It's an affordable makeup brand that made a color story based on a collab that speaks to a lot of people's hearts. Like, why wouldn't it sell out really fast? ColourPop is really popular. That's why it's called ColourPop, because it's a pop culture affordable brand. If you're one of the people that was like mad about it, don't be offended. I just kind of maybe I'm bringing a different perspective. I think I'm gonna put the purple in the inner corner. I just think it's gonna look good. Okay, I'm gonna use my Voldomorphe JH33 and I'm gonna go into this color from the Dreamer palette, this Blurple. I just felt like, so this is one of the shades that Amanda and Ellie Starr put in, and honestly, it was like, I felt like it was a really good choice because they didn't put any purple, and that field scene is like filled with purple flowers. Plus, I think purple is actually a big part of the story of the cinematography. Like her bedroom is purple, like he's like, do you still like purple? Like she's a brown-eyed girl, so purple actually looks really good. And her skin tone is actually so white, it's like bluish purple. And now I look all wolfy and shit. Damn, that looks really cool. Wow, that looks so good. Okay, now I'm gonna go in with my P. Louise cut crease brush and my NYX glitter primer. Honestly, I wish that there was more than 20 colors or more than 15 colors. I think I could have made a way better palette with 20 colors. But then I felt like everybody would have been like maybe disappointed because then I really didn't dupe it at all. But I feel like with 20 colors, I could have made a fucking palette that you could do looks for months. All right, I'm going to use my Voldomorphe JH51 and I'm gonna go into this green that was in the Whale Song palette and I'm gonna put that on the bottom. And then I'm gonna go into this from the Glaminatrix palette. Nice. What? I mean, honestly, I would like to do this over and over again and just, cause there was so many shadows that I was like, ooh, I really want that one. And then I had to like pare them down. Like they just couldn't be in there. Damn, that looks really fucking good. Okay, and now I'm gonna go in with this Voldomorphe M431, and I'm gonna go into this color from the Don't Be Jelly palette. And this is the final look. I'm gonna go do the rest of my face and I'll be back when I'm done. So this is the manifesto, the pièce de résistance. I used my ColourPop Kathleen Lights in I Need Space, my Lime Crime Lip Glaze in Moss, my Unearthly Cosmetics lip liner in Char, my Unearthly Cosmetics highlighter in Twilight. Actually, it's the white, like silver one. And honestly, I really like it a lot more than I thought I was going to for just like a white sparkly finish. Like, I think it's really pretty. That's it. That's everything. So anyways, I love the color story that I came up with. I love the colors that I used. I think this looks really spot on. I think it's like hits the mark like perfectly. And if I could add like 5 more colors and make this a 20 pan, I thought it was just a stretch that I wasn't going to be able to, like, I didn't want to like fuck with it that much. But if I could add 5 more colors, this would be like a extravaganza of like textures and colors and shifts and like beautiful options inspired by, I feel like they were onto a really good idea. I think that the blues and the greens and the forest and the murky nature of the palette, the color story that they were inspired to create is really good. I love the idea. I think it was really on track with something really unique, but the fact that there was all those whites in there, whites and silvers, and then on top of the fact that there was 2 browns. Oh, the other thing is I kind of integrated that brown concept. Oh, I used my ColourPop Overboard liner cream gel liner on the eyes to give it the brown and the brown. So I integrated the brown. I really love that they used brown. I just didn't want it in my palette. Like, I'm never going to use a brown, period, like unless it's the only deepening shade and it's just the right sort of brown. But I really like the fact that it was like a warm tone brown because it looked like wood and dirt. So I love that in the palette. I just didn't want it in my own palette. So I didn't think they missed the mark on that. I thought that it kind of needed that, you know, the brown, the warm tone brown plus the blending out brown shade, which was that peach. I just didn't need it in my own palette. So anyways, yeah, this is it. I hope you guys love it. I hope you guys are able to do something with it. They said they're going to restock the palette. Everybody's pissed. I feel like everybody should have been happy that ColourPop finally came out with something that was really fucking fun and cool and good, but instead everybody was pissed. So I don't know. I just find that disappointing. And actually a little, when I was reading the comments of how like pissed everybody was and the comments that they were making, like I could see being pissed that you missed the launch. I've been pissed that I missed launches before too, but I like talked about it on my channel or like with my friends, like in private. I didn't like smash the brand on a global format. Also, like I feel like the amount of mad that everybody was is like, it just goes to show like how great everybody thought the launch was. And also I felt a little bit embarrassed, like how you get embarrassed when you're watching, when you're like a kid and you're watching a sex scene in front of your parents. Like that's how it felt to me. Like I felt like I was in the background, like nobody really knew, but I felt like a little embarrassed that I was even reading the comments. I'm not sure like what the connection is to that, but that's how I felt. I felt like shameful. Like I felt like shame, embarrassment. So anyways, that's all there is. I hope you guys love this color story and I hope that you guys are inspired to like create something that really fits your aesthetic. Also, Ensley Rain has magnetic, Unearthly has magnetic, Melt has magnetic, Old Kaleidos has magnetic, Glaminatrix has magnetic. God, there was another one that Shroud has magnetic, Menagerie has magnetic. So anyways, if you guys are wanting to create your own palette, those are like some of the brands that I use that all had magnetic, at least most of them. So anyways, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell because you can't wait to see what happens next. Hit the like button if you like this look, or if you like my palette, or if you just like my sparkling personality and my boyish charm. If you guys want to see more videos like this, I actually had somebody else was the inspiration for me to do things like this, but quite frankly, it took me a day and then into the next day to create a build your own palette. So if a lot of people would like to see like duping the vibes so that you can create your own palettes instead of having to buy every new release, then let me know in the comments and hang out with me in the comments because I fucking love it. If you got like halfway through this video and you were like, oh my god, she's so pretty till she opens her big fucking mouth, then go check me out on Instagram. I don't talk as much on Instagram. And if you were like, don't sugarcoat it, Katie, why don't you tell us how you really feel? Then go check out my Patreon because I don't hold anything back on my Patreon. I will be moving my Patreon to my YouTube membership by the 30th, which is the last Tuesday of this month. So if you guys are on my Patreon or if you guys were interested in getting on my Patreon, yeah, it's moving. So thank you guys so much for watching. You could have been anywhere, but you were here wasting your time with me, and I totally appreciate you. Later. Slayer!